Welcome to the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show. This is our 134th episode. Today is Thursday, February 9th, 2023. My name is Sunsara Taylor. I am the co-host of the show, and I am coming to you from Los Angeles, California. Andy Z is out this week, but you will be seeing him later in the show. And I want to start today with a special shout out to our 3 new Patreons and to all of the Patreons who keep this show going. This past week, Rovan and Rodney Wells saw their son, Tyre Nichols, lowered into the ground. A beautiful young man, filled with light and love, brutally cut down by Memphis police. Then, just days later, video came out of Los Angeles police chasing a man down who had lost both legs and was in the midst of a mental health crisis. Anthony Lowe scrambled for his life on the stumps that were left of his legs, but the police shot him anyway. 11 times in the back, according to his lawyer. Worse than they would do a dog. Meanwhile, the U.S. is ratcheting up its threats against China, escalating the danger of war, even nuclear war, which could destroy humanity and our planet. And the same thing in Ukraine, where the U.S. is continuing to fund, train, and arm, including now with battle tanks, the Ukrainians in the U.S.'s proxy war against Russia. Both sides, Russia and the U.S., are imperialist gangsters. Both sides are pushing us closer to a direct inter-imperialist confrontation with the very real and devastating possibility of nuclear war. And in Turkey and Syria, our hearts break for the millions impacted by the devastating earthquake there. A nightmare that is intensified by the desperate conditions that so many were already trapped in due to this system. This system of capitalism imperialism, this system that rules in this country, this system which dominates the globe, this system which requires its police to go out and murder people and many other crimes, this system needs to be overthrown. It needs to be swept off the face of this earth as soon as possible. It needs to be replaced with a new, emancipating system as set forward in this Constitution for the new Socialist Republic in North America, authored by Bob Avakian. This is the mission of this show, the Revolution Nothing Less show, and it is a mission that you need to take up as well. What this revolution can open up, what it can make possible, is at the heart of today's episode. And we're going to bring this to you through a powerful excerpt from the historic interviews that Andy Z and I did with Bob Avakian, BA, here on the Revolution Nothing Less show last fall. BA is the most important political thinker and leader in the world today, and these interviews are an extraordinary opportunity to get to know him up close and personal as never before. BA shared deeply from his life and personal influences about becoming a revolutionary in the 1960s, working closely with the Black Panther Party in their revolutionary days, and going forward from there. Never giving up on the need to put an end to this system through revolution that causes so much misery for humanity all over the world. And going further than anyone before in developing a thoroughly scientific approach and a radically emancipating vision of the future that really could be. And a strategy to make this real. Bob Avakian is the author of The New Communism, a whole new framework for human emancipation. And this comes alive in these interviews, both in what BA says, but also in the whole way he brings it to you, with heart and soul, with generosity of spirit, as well as hardcore, bone-deep determination to make this revolution real. This is living leadership for our time and for the future. So after today's episode, watch all 3 interviews on our channel and spread them widely. If tens of thousands and then millions were to watch these interviews, it would be a game changer in terms of breaking people out of going along with this system, lifting their sights to a whole different way we could live and relate, and changing what many decide to do with their lives now, at this time when the future itself is being determined. In the excerpt we're going to share today, Bob Avakian gets into why state power in the hands of the right people, the right class, is a very good thing. Then, Lenny Wolff and Michelle Xai will work with what BA has laid out to grapple further with the liberating changes that revolution can make possible. and they will talk right down on the ground about how we need to be moving today and how you need to be part of working with us to prepare the ground, prepare the people, and prepare the leadership to make this revolution. Later in the episode, Joe Veale will shred the poisonous program of praying and pleading that was preached by Al Sharpton at Tyre Nichols' funeral, pointing again to the urgent need for revolution. And finally, we'll share an interview that Andy Z did with Annie Day out on the street, getting into a very creative, artistic way that the Revcoms went out to wake people up to the danger of the U.S.'s escalations in Ukraine. One essential point I want to drive home before we begin today's episode is that we are living in a time of major change, a rare time, with deepening and sharpening conflicts among the ruling powers and throughout all of society. A time when things that have remained basically the same for decades can and are changing radically in a very short period of time. Right now, this is moving rapidly towards a very dangerous, even murderous resolution. But all this also provides a stronger basis and greater openings to break the hold of this system over people and to make real advances for revolution. This rare time must not be wasted. So I want you to keep that in mind as you listen and learn and as you are challenged through today's episode. Now is the time for you to step into or to step up your participation in this fight for the future. So with that, let's get started. This is Bob Avakian responding to a question about why he has emphasized that revolutionary state power in the hands of the right class of people is a very good thing. So we wanted to start right out with asking you, you have made the bold statement that it is right to want state power, that state power in the hands of the right people and the right class is a great thing. And to wildly understate it, this is not how most people think about state power. Why is state power a great thing?
Well, you have to begin with what you referred to, in the hands of the right class of people, the right kind of state power based on the right kind of system. One reason why a lot of people may not think state power is so great is because they're living under the exercise of it by these monstrous oppressors. So the idea, the idea is promoted, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely, and all this bullshit from some British lord, So, people are, inclined to look at the way things are now and how power is exercised and have a hard time imagining it could be exercised in a different way by different people. And so the reason I say state power is a great thing is because in order to do all the things that we need to do to uproot all this oppression, you have to have power in society in order to do them. I mean, the reason we can't do them now is because the wrong people, that is a class of exploiters, the capitalist imperialists, have state power and use that state power to suppress any attempt at seriously uprooting all this oppression. So we need a different kind of state power, a socialist state power that, first of all, is radically different in terms of what it's based on, what it's aiming for, and also whom it involves in the exercise of state power. It's involving the masses of people increasingly in playing an initiating role and a conscious role in transforming society. And unlike the present system, socialist state power backs up the masses of people in moving to uproot all this oppression, while it also provides leadership to them to see what they're up against, what are the contradictions they have to break through on in order to uproot all this, and how to wage that struggle. So it's a completely different kind of state power. Any idea, just think about it. Any idea that you were going to overthrow the existing system and then you're not going to have any state power, guess what happens? You are going to have state power. It's going to be the state power you just overthrew will be back in power in a quick minute. So the whole idea that you can do without a state, without state power, yes, you need a radically different kind of state power, but you need power to be able to lead masses of people and back them up in making all these transformations. What happens now when people go out? First of all, the state power, I'll just back up a second, will be radically different. You're not going to have a police force that murders people on a daily basis in order to maintain a system of oppression. The police forces, we will need police forces, we will need armed forces to defend the revolution. But these forces will be radically different. They will be the masses of people who have risen up to make the revolution in the first place. That's from whom the police and the armed forces will be drawn. And I've made the statement before. Some people say, "Whoa, wait a minute! You're going to take all these people out here running around right now, shooting each other and selling drugs, and you're going to give them state power?" I don't think so. I don't think I want to be part of that. No, we're not talking about people as they are now. We're talking about people. Go back to the question that Andy raised in a previous talk. The previous interview we were doing, people as they've been radically transformed, as they've radically transformed themselves on the basis of being struggled with in the course of transforming the world and making revolution. So then, the state power is going to be in the hands of masses of people who've been struggled with to be emancipators of humanity and to make a revolution on that basis. And, there's a lot of experience in the history of revolution, and particularly communist revolution, that we can draw from, that it is possible to transform people. Like when they made the revolution in China, for example, which took a different path, just to be clear, for anybody out there, just to be clear, was a revolution that in those particular circumstances was made by waging armed struggle from the very, very beginning. Armed struggle from the beginning and throughout. That was the character of the Chinese Revolution because of the particular character of Chinese society and the conditions that they were dealing with. Our revolution is different. It's a period of carrying out the three prepares through political and ideological work and, standing up and defending the people and fighting the power, but not attempting to wage an armed struggle until the conditions for that have been brought into being. That's where the three prepares come in. That's what we're working toward, but that's not what we're doing now. But there's still something to learn from the Chinese Revolution. When Mao started up the People's War in China, the armed struggle against the existing oppressive government and the imperialists who were behind it, the U.S. and Britain in particular, he said, "I went to the brave elements," what we might call the brothers and sisters on the street, in our circumstances. He said, "I went to them because they weren't afraid to die." But then a tremendous amount of struggle had to be waged. What's this about? What's this armed struggle for? This is not armed struggle to go out and rip off people. They had to have points of attention, to make sure that the people were adhering to the principles of the revolution and applying the principles of the revolution. Things like you don't take a needle or a thread from the masses of people. You don't go about, this was mainly a male army at that time, although the masses of women did become involved. You don't go abusing women. There are different principles here that have to do with the revolution that we're carrying out. And there was struggle, and that's why they had to have those points of discipline and points of attention. So we're talking about masses of people who've been transformed through struggle and transforming themselves in order to bring about the revolution we're talking about and bring into being the necessary state power. But that state power, once established, will be completely different, radically different. The role of state power and whether it really serves the revolution to emancipate the masses of people or whether it actually constitutes another oppressive force over the masses of people is determined by the content of that state power, by the line, the politics and ideology and program that it's based on and that is leading it. That's how you know, and that's how the masses of people can be led to evaluate what's the character of this state power. Is this state power that's standing above the mass of people and turning into an oppressive force that's going to actually restore the old system of exploitation and oppression? Or is this a state power by its content, by its actions, by the way it's being led, by what it's fighting for, by what's guiding it, is actually backing up and supporting the masses of people in emancipating themselves and supporting the revolution throughout the world toward the same goal of emancipation, uprooting and eliminating all antagonistic conflicts among people, all forms of oppression and exploitation. But that's why state power, yes, I want us to have state power, not the three of us sitting here. but the masses of people who've risen up to make a revolution so that they can carry through what they fought for in that revolution. And yes, so that they can actually back up the masses of people in carrying out those transformations and prevent anyone from actually overthrowing the system that exists and re-enslaving the masses of people. So, this is why state power, socialist state power, is a great thing to have. And it's something we should, everyone who wants to see a more just world should be hungering for this state power, not, worrying about what it'll be like. Yeah, there needs to be a struggle over what it's going to be like, and that will be an ongoing struggle. But we should be primarily hungering for that state power, because that's the power that will enable these transformations I'm talking about. Now, to be clear, since I said it will prevent people from overthrowing the socialist system, that doesn't mean that there won't be allowance for dissent. Doesn't mean that we don't need a lot of intellectual and cultural ferment. We do. That's all embodied in the Constitution for the new socialist republic in North America. Anyone who raises objections to what the government is doing or what the policies are, or even to the very existence of a socialist state, will be allowed to do so. And there will even be ways that criticism is encouraged and fostered and dissent, because you need that. You need to know what your shortcomings are. And the masses of people need to thrash out what's right and wrong, what will really lead to on the road of emancipation, and what, even though it might say it's doing that, is actually leading back to the old way. So, there'll be a flourishing and even a promotion of dissent. By that I mean even in the, in the arts and the media and so on, provision made for people to have a vehicle to criticize and raise dissent, even while people who try to violently overthrow the new socialist system will be prevented from doing so. Oh, well, you're just like the people in power now. That's what they say. You can dissent as long as you don't try to seriously challenge them. Well, no, we're not just like them. For one thing, they don't encourage and promote dissent. They limit dissent within a very narrow sphere. But second of all, once again, we're back to what's the nature, what's the character of that state power? And the reason we're not like them is because what the state power is for, what it concretely does, what it supports the masses of people in doing, what philosophy or ideology, what program, what politics, what social relations it's all embodying and promoting, which are the complete and direct opposite of what exists under this system. So no, we're not just like them at all. We're radically different.
Hi, I'm Lenny Wolff. I'm a follower of Bob Avakian and a revolutionary communist, and I'm a member of the National Get Organized for an Actual Revolution tour. And I'm talking here today with Michelle Xai, who's also a member of the tour, also a follower of BA, and a leader of the Los Angeles Revolution Club. Hi, Michelle.
Hello.
How you doing?
Good.
Hi. We watched this clip that we just all watched together yesterday as well. I watched it earlier this week because I'd been thinking a lot about this and what a difference state power makes and how we have to be actually talking with people and saying to people, we have a whole better way that things could be done. And I just, we're doing this right after and in the wake of the police murder of Tyre Nichols that many of you watched and saw the brutal inhumanity that was visited upon somebody for absolutely no reason whatsoever, and who know that this goes on day after day, night after night in every city around the country. And I just wondered if you wanted to say anything in that relation as we get going into this, some of what BA talks about in this clip.
Every day, almost every day, just since the beginning of this year, just 2023, right? We opened up, greeted the new year with three, just here in Los Angeles, right? 3 people that were murdered by the LAPD, right? And then we see another one of a man without legs, thrown out of his wheelchair and then shot to death, and it brings to life how, if we had state power, as Bob Avakian says in that clip, we could do things in a radically different way that cannot be done under this system because of what these police actually enforce, right? So it makes you angry and continuing to be even angry about the fact that this is not going to stop, that people are dying at the hands of the police, and all these other things that we call the 5 stops, right? Under this system cannot be resolved unless we had state power. The oppression of women, the destruction of the environment, the wars for empire, the crisis of immigrants, flooding to the border, right? Like all of these things, cannot be resolved unless we actually have state power and can do things radically different.
Yeah, that is the important thing. Last week, I remember that Noche Diaz and Andy Z were talking about this murder of Tyre Nichols, and Noche brought up from Basics 124. This is Basics. It's the Handbook of Revolution of really, really critical quotes from Bob Avakian. Noche brought up the quote 124 that to the effect that the police do not serve and protect the people. They serve and protect relations of exploitation and oppression. And yesterday, when we were talking about the socialist state power that we're going to bring into being with revolution, we were talking about some of the differences it would make in things like housing and education. And I just wondered if there was any of that you wanted to bring to bear for the people watching.
Yeah, I mean, as an example, we were reading together, one quote from Basics, right? And it made me think about, even like the contrast, in something like education, right? I've talked about this story before, but just, in high school being, reading Shakespeare and having a really hard time understanding, right? And raising a question, I was kicked out of class and told that I was stupid and couldn't amount to anything and couldn't, and they didn't, instead of actually working together to understand, and learn, right? Something like Shakespeare and actually and a lot of the things that people are locked out of even being able to work with ideas under this society, that in a whole different, society and what's laid out in the Constitution, right? The education would be so different, where again, people would be able to work together to be able to understand these things, and not just to build up your own bank of knowledge, but to actually go to work on the problems of the society. We're going for the emancipation of all of humanity, bringing these youth and bringing, people together to go to work on, the whole of society, right? It's just so different, just in contrast. But again, you need state power to be able to do something like that.
The contrast, being kicked out of class for asking a question. What does that tell you about how much they want to foster critical thinking in this society, especially for Latina youth, for Black youth, for other oppressed youth? What does that tell you, that one example? And then what does it mean? We just have a piece in on our website up this week that makes the point that the whole point of Bob Avakian's leadership is to develop critical thinkers, strategic people who can grapple with strategy, who can grapple with how the new society needs to be, what the foundations of that society need to be, what kind of people we need in a socialist society. There's so many examples. He talks in Basics, and there's discussion in the Constitution that BA wrote for the new Socialist Republic of North America about housing. And the situation today where there's huge skyscrapers, some of which are empty now, and then homeless people hounded and harassed for camping on the streets because they have no home and can't begin to afford somewhere to live. And in a socialist society, this is going to be totally different. And the police in this society, if you get evicted, if you're a single mother or a family, or you have 4 or 5 kids, and you can't make rent 1 or 2 months, The police, the job of the police is to put you, your kids, and your stuff on the street so that that landlord can rent that out for a profit to somebody else. And I don't care if you had the so-called Prince of Peace himself wearing the uniform, he would still have to put that mother and that family on the street. And if they said anything, he would be driven to beat on their heads and put them in jail. And that's what it means to serve and protect the relations of this system. Whereas in a socialist system, it would be totally different. That's not what the job of the people's security would be. It would be to help people who are running into problems with their housing, to figure out a way to adjudicate things, to develop things, to solve problems, not to just beat on people, to crush the problem, to crush the people who are perceived as problems. What do people do, though? What do we do to get to that society? What would you tell people?
Well, we need to overthrow the existing state power, right? And in order to do that, we need revolution, right? That's what we're getting organized for, right? That's what, it's gonna, just think about what an actual revolution means, right? Meeting, defeating, dismantling, overthrowing the existing system and replacing it. That's gonna take millions of people. That's gonna take a serious force of, thousands that are gonna lead that, that have to, and that's part of what we're going to work on now, right? They're going to have to break with a lot of shit. I had to break with a lot of shit, with religion, with, with nationalism, right? This idea that like what I thought were quote unquote my people, right? When I came to actually understand, the situation of people in other parts of the world, that were suffering tremendously, and actually came and went deeper to like, why, where was this coming from, and how those people, from Mexico, from Central America, were linked together with like the people in other parts like Africa that I was learning about, right? And came to actually see those are my people, and actually, really rupturing with this, right? With this nationalism and taking up the new communism, right? And these are things that people have to break with, because think about it, right? Something like religion as an example, right? Which I had to break with too. You're talking about, leading a revolution and leading millions, right? If you come up against obstacles, what are you going to turn to? You're not going to get down on your knees and start praying and, looking for something to drop down from heaven to save you. You have to go to the science. You have to actually, have a really firm scientific, grounding to be able to lead people through all the way to this society that we're talking about, right? To be able to lead that, right? So we in the Revolution Club have this slogan, fight the power and transform the people for revolution. That means people, really transforming, right? They're thinking, and as I said, letting go of this bullshit that stands in the way of actually being able to get to that society. No, we're not going to be, about revenge. No, we're not going to be about dogging women. No, we're not going to be about making jokes or derogatory shit towards like, people of different nationalities that speak different languages. This is all laid out in our points of attention for the revolution that we live for, that we live by, that we fight for, and that we struggle with each other to actually, take up. And again, that's part of transforming the thinking of people, right? And taking up this new communism and the leadership of Bob Avakian.
Wow, it's I thought that spoke a lot to some of that really, really critical point, this transforming the people now. I want to take one little part of this. I want to move over to one thing, though, on the fight the power, because I think right now, if I understand our audience and from people I've talked to and things I've observed, people aren't necessarily out in the streets as they were a few years ago around Tyre Nichols, but I know some of you are seething about this inside. Some of you are seeking out ways to talk about how this is making you so angry and so looking for some way to act. And I wondered if if we should talk a little bit about some of what the orientation of the Revolution Club is towards these kinds of outrages.
Well, look, in Bob Avakian's work, Something Terrible or Something Truly Emancipating, which people should go and read, that's up on our website, revcom.us, he actually speaks to, just in terms of this, just the shit that people are caught up in, right? This thing of, instead of fighting and killing each other, what people need to be doing now is uniting to defend each other, opposing all unjust violence, not launching attacks on anyone, but at the same time, not allowing the police or civilian fascist thugs to wantonly brutalize and murder people. And people need to do this as part of building up the forces for revolution.
I think that's extremely important. What you just said is something to work towards. I also want to bring in, though, in this situation in particular that we're living in right now, another thing BA has said, that there is no right for anyone, including police, to just murder someone. And there is a right and a responsibility to defend and protect people from unjust attacks on their rights and on their very lives. And we take that very seriously. And if you take that seriously, if this resonates with you, you need to be part of this Revolution Club. This is not something, when we talk about revolution, when Michelle talks about, this is not something off in the far distant reaches of time. The way this country is being pulled apart from top to bottom right now, the huge shocks and changes in people's lives. Last year at this time, there was no war in Ukraine. Last year at this time, women had the right all over this country to control their own bodies and to get an abortion if they wanted to. Last year at this time, there were actually wildfires sweeping across the planet, but that too has gotten far worse. People are being forced at this point to confront things they never thought they would have to confront in a situation in which those who rule us are no longer able to keep things together. This is a time, a rare time, that we could actually, in which revolution is more possible than it normally is. So, Michelle, do you have anything, final words you want to say to the people watching you?
Yeah. I mean, look, just think about this whole discussion and how radically different, we could live, right? And get with this revolution, because again, there's no stopping all of these horrors that, as you're talking about, right, get worsened by the day, It's on us to actually not squander this rare opportunity, right? And actually go to work to bring that time when we can actually bring this whole system down closer, right? And actually go bring this whole system down. And that means getting with this revolution. That means getting with the leadership of Bob Avakian, right? If you're in Los Angeles, if you're in New York City, if you're in Chicago, link up with your Revolution Club. If you're in the Bay Area, link up with the Revolution Club out there. If you're in New York and the Bay Area, link up with Revolution Books. If you're not in any of these cities, DM us, But most importantly, wherever you are, get into these BA interviews right away. Watch all 3 parts and spread them amongst everyone you know. Gather your family, your friends, watch them together, discuss it. Let us know how that goes. But look, there's no squandering. We can't squander this opportunity. People have to know that we don't have to live this way and that there is a force getting organized for revolution.
I'm Joe Veale, and I have something to say about the Reverend Al Sharpton and the eulogy he gave at the funeral for Tyre Nichols. You saw the video of what the police did to Tyre, right?
Police have released that video showing officers beating Tyre Nichols. The video is every bit as horrific as Memphis officials had warned it would be. Body camera footage and video from surveillance cameras from January 7th show officers hitting, kicking, and pepper spraying Tyre Nichols. In the video, 29-year-old Tyre Nichols can be heard calling out for his mother. Nichols was hospitalized and then died 3 days later.
In that video, you can see he was already on the ground after he was pulled over at that other location. The officers in the video repeatedly punch and kick Nichols over and over again in the video.
Al Sharpton said he was personally insulted when he watched the video.
And the reason why, Mr. and Mrs. Wells, what happened to Tyre is so personal to me is that 5 black men that wouldn't have had a job in the police department would not ever be thought of to be in an elite squad. In the city that Dr. King lost his life, not far away from that balcony, you beat a brother to death. There's nothing more insulting and offensive to those of us that fight to open doors, that you walk through those doors and act like the folks we had to fight for to get you through them doors.
What has happened to the dream, Sharpton asked. The dream King saw when he gave what became his last speech, the mountaintop speech, where King said he has seen the promised land, which according to Sharpton meant seeing Barack Obama becoming president, Kamala Harris vice president, black people becoming police chiefs.
The last speech he gave right here in Memphis when he went to the mountaintop. I believe when he looked over, he could see a Barack Obama become president. I believe when he went to the mountaintop, he could look over and see a Kamala Harris sitting as vice president. I believe when he looked over from the mountaintop, he saw black police chiefs. What has happened to the dream? In the city where the dreamer laid down and shed his blood, you have the unmitigated gall to beat your brother.
Now, what about this? First of all, America is based on a system, an economic and political system called capitalism and imperialism. From slavery days up to the present, white supremacy has been in its bloodstream. As long as this system that the police serve and protect exists, it will continually murder black people, Latino people, Native American people. Look at reality. Since 1960 up till today, the police have murdered more black people than the KKK lynched after the Civil War up till 1960. The police murder over 1,000 people every year. This has been going on for decades. Last year, they set a new record in the number of people they murdered. You can have 1,000 Barack Obamas, 1,000 black pig chiefs, and black pigs elite and non-elite. They will serve and protect the system that rules over the people. Obama had Kill Tuesdays. Every week, he would gather with his advisors and come up with a list of people to murder with drones in places like Yemen, Pakistan, Libya, Somalia, Afghanistan, Iraq. After the youth in Baltimore rose up to protest the murder of Freddie Gray, Obama called them thugs, but he never called the police who broke Freddie Gray's neck thugs.
A handful of protesters, a handful of criminals and thugs.
Fuck Obama. Racial equality is possible, but not under this system. We need revolution to overthrow this system, defeat it, dismantle it, all its institutions, its police, courts, prison, government institutions, military, all of it, replacing them with new institutions that serve the revolution, serve the people, and most fundamentally serves the struggle to emancipate humanity all over the world. Look again at reality. Most things people in this country use and consume is made by millions and millions of people all over the third world, in Latin America, Africa, the Middle East, Asia. 150 million of those who are making the products we use to live are children. Children without a childhood, because they are in the mines digging out minerals, in the sweatshop making garments and clothes, in the fields cultivating food that people in countries like this one eat. But people in the countries that produce this food die of malnutrition, starvation, and disease in the millions every year. If Al Sharpton's dream is to get inclusion in this parasitic system, no thanks. Look once again at reality. Millions in this country, especially, though not only those in the inner city, have become expendable. This system has no future for millions, especially the youth, especially those who are Black, Latino, and Native American. Millions are in prison. Millions more are in the pipeline. Millions are left in desperate conditions where they are pitted against each other, fighting against each other over petty bullshit, just as a way to make a mark in this dog-eat-dog system. When you hear Biden talk about law and order and fund the police,
the answer is not to defund the police. It's to fund the police. Fund them. Fund them.
This is who he has in his sights. The same ones that the fascists and the Republican Party are preparing to wage a race war against. And this toxic combination of capitalism and white supremacy is hurling society towards genocide in today's conditions. Fuck the police. Sharpton said he is working to pass the George Floyd bill. This bill would allow the family of those murdered by the police to sue the police. It would also outlaw chokeholds. Now, even if this became law, it would not do shit. You have the right now to sue for racial discrimination in applying for jobs, but it does not stop racial discrimination. Chokeholds is only one way the police murder, and it's not even the main way.
We want to see the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act passed. Some of us are going to fight until we make this legislation happen. I don't know when, I don't know how, but we won't stop until we hold you accountable.
This is worse than begging. Sharpton is not even pleading to end police murder, let alone the system that requires it. He is crawling, asking to be able to go to court after you do murder us. It's like he's telling the slaves, I'm not going to stop praying until the slave master at least lets us nurse our wounds after he whips us. Now, if we had a system determined to root out oppression and inequality, if we made a revolution, we could stop police murder on day one. It's not that hard, but without revolution, it is impossible. During the eulogy for Tyre Nichols, Sharpton brought some religious mumbo-jumbo about a non-existent God is going to take the death of Tyre and raise it up and make a better world like the non-existent God did with the death of Joseph and the creation story in the Bible.
I want you to turn your attention very briefly to the 37th chapter of Genesis. It reads, so Joseph went after his brothers and found them near Dothan. but they saw him in the distance, and before he reached them, they plotted to kill him.
Or how the non-existent God did with the death and dream of Martin Luther King.
But I come to Memphis today to tell you the same mistake Joseph's brothers made is a mistake you made. You thought you threw Joseph in a pit. You thought you threw Dr. King's dream in a pit. But every time you throw something in a pit, God takes the pit and raises it up and changes the whole world. I believe that God will take him, Tyre, out of that pit and use him as a symbol for justice all over this country.
The slave master gave you Christianity and the Bible. It makes you believe in things that do not exist and think that enduring all this suffering has some higher purpose. Bullshit. It's mental slave chains that went along with the physical slave chains. It's time to let that shit go and deal with reality how it really is so that we can change it. And you can see that pursuing the dream in reality means accepting the lie that there is no other choice but the system, the nightmare for humanity that is capitalism, imperialism. The most you can hope for is getting some people that look like you in position of authority, some laws on paper, while the system acts according to the needs of capitalism, imperialism, with white supremacy in its bloodline. I say no. Once again, look at reality. These are desperate and extreme times we are living in. Time to stop talking foolishness. We have a chance to really make an actual revolution, to really overthrow this capitalist imperialist monster, break it apart, dismantle it, and set up an entirely new socialist system that goes forward in digging up all the white supremacy and other social divisions between people that are deeply rooted in this system. We have the strategy and the leadership for that in Bob Avakian to bring forward millions, and when the conditions are right, to meet and defeat its armed might. A blueprint. We have a blueprint for a new socialist society. We are working for this now and are determined to see it through. Get with this. Get with the Revcoms. Get with the revolutionary leadership of Bob Avakian now.
The war in Ukraine has been raging for almost a year. This is a proxy war between imperialist gangsters, the US and NATO on one side and Russia on the other. It is unjust on both sides, and right now, the US government, in our names, is ratcheting up that war, sending arms, money, training, and now battle tanks. They are pushing past what were once red lines and escalating the risk of an open and direct confrontation with Russia, and even the potential for all-out nuclear war. It is urgent that people in this country be challenged to stop going along with their government in this deadly conflict. And that is exactly what Annie Day and other Revcoms did recently, in a very creative way, at a major art event and concert here in Los Angeles, put on by the Russian punk band Pussy Riot. We need much more of this, so let's watch Andy Z's interview with them out on the street.
I'm here with Annie Day, who helped organize and conceive of this art installation. Let's start with why you felt it important to get the Revcoms out here with this display.
Yeah, so Pussy Riots did this art show tonight in a gallery, and they did a punk rock performance. And, you know, they're out here opposing Putin's crimes and actually calling for the support of the Ukrainian soldiers. And, you know, there's an unjust invasion of Russia against Ukraine, but there is a very dangerous situation, and people in this country are allowing themselves to be played in support of the U.S. empire in its aggression against the Russian gangster imperialists. And so we thought it was important to come out here and challenge the way in which people are being played, challenge this American chauvinism that's default and spontaneous among people, and it's so poisonous, and to actually bring clarity to what's going on in Ukraine, that this is not a war between autocracy and democracy. This is a war, at this point, it's a proxy war between imperialist aggressors on both sides. And we've had some deep discussions with people, including people who feel very agonized about, yes, I agree that the U.S. is really terrible and I don't want to see war, but they actually have never thought that, oh wait, maybe we don't have to rely or choose between oppressors. And so, you know, and then there's been a lot of debate and a lot of struggle as well.
Okay, well, why don't we show people what we've done here?
So people are out here standing on both the American and the Russian flags with the slogans, no U.S.-NATO war with Russia, no World War III. It's this system, not humanity, that needs to become extinct. We don't accept their future. It's time to get organized for a real revolution. All night we've been playing the audio of the interviews, of excerpts of the interviews with the revolutionary leader, Bob Avakian, that were on your show, the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show. And people have never heard the kind of agitation that BA is doing in these interviews.
I mean, people need to wake up and get serious. This is a contest between oppressors, the world's leading oppressors, with the U.S. number one. Yes, USA number one oppressor and plunderer in the entire world for decades.
The people have never heard what's actually the clarity that he's bringing about what's really happening with this war, but also calling out and challenging this American chauvinism that the U.S. is number one oppressor. So we've been playing that all night, and then I want to come over here because I want to show you guys this really important installation that we've had people taking pictures of all night of, yes, the Russian crimes that people need to know about, and the 8-foot-tall American crimes of people actually walking through. Yes, and comparing and contrasting both, but that we don't have to choose between these. And walking through, what is the actual nature of this system? And too many people think this is a parallel fact. Oh yeah, I know, the U.S. has done all these terrible things throughout its history, but they've not actually been forced to reckon with what that says about it, the nature of the U.S. and its role in the world. So people have been looking at this all night and scanning that QR code, and then to visualize this behind you, we've had these images of really making people confront what is the cost and the scale of the role of America in the world when it's been relied on, and why it's not a force for good in the world. This is a force for brutal exploitation. And then I think, and the other thing we've been challenging people with all night is, what does all the wealth in this country sit on? It sits on this. It sits on Nagasaki, it sits on genocide, it sits on the war on Libya. This is what it sits on. And this is what it's enforced by in terms of the global exploitation and the role of the U.S. military.
What would you say, you began talking about some of the response of people, and is there one thing you would draw particularly out of this experience that you want to share with the viewers, a question to pose to people?
I mean, the one thing I would say is people have they've never actually had the American chauvinism challenged this deeply. It would be that. It's that people really don't have this assumption challenge that America is a force for good in the world, and they need to break with that idea.
Well, that paralleled some of the discussions I had as well. But one of the things I noticed is that this was largely an art crowd, not just artists, but people who work in the art industry, galleries, as well as people who are patrons of the arts. And I had almost no snark from anybody. People were very open to hearing what we had to say. What brought you out to the Jeffrey Deitch Gallery today to see Pussy Riot and their protests?
I met Nadia Riot in San Francisco about a year and a half ago. I ran into her on the street, but I've been following her movement for quite some time, for years, since she was in prison, actually. And I've just always supported their peaceful yet loud way of protesting Putin. I'm really fascinated and empowered by the fact that she uses art as her main weapon.
Yeah, she's done some very brave things against her own government, which is, of course, a highly oppressive and repressive capitalist and imperialist country. Of course, not as powerful imperialist country as our own country. So she does what she does in Russia. What does that tell you and make you think about in terms of our responsibility living in this country for what our government does in our name?
That's a great question. I think the atrocities that happen in the name of greed, in the name of war, in the name of power, no matter what country it is that's backing that up, is just disgusting. It's horrifying that any human on this planet thinks it's a good idea to tear other people down. But living in the U.S. and seeing so many people calcified, maybe kind of brainwashed and oblivious to the whole situation makes me really sad, and that's why I appreciate what she's doing especially.
Well, have you taken a look at what we, the Revcoms, are doing here in terms of standing on these two flags and the whole display?
I appreciate what you're doing here very much, actually. And I think the symbols that you've got going on here, really, the simplicity, it's exactly what's going on.
What made you dance on the American flag?
I think for me, a lot of people put so much into the flag as meaning like freedom and democracy, justice and all that, and it doesn't really stand for any of that anymore. To me, it's just hypocrisy. You have a government that's like, we're supposed to be the land of the free, but we're not even the most democratic. When you look at other nations and you see people saying that they, care, but in reality, they just care about their own comfort and what works for them, and they are totally fine with taking away other people's right to happiness.
Did you get a chance to see this art project that's actually making a very bold political point?
Yeah, it's really, really convincing. I see the point that they're making. Nobody wants a nuclear warfare.
And the other thing is they'd never heard of Bob Avakian. They'd never heard of the Revolution Nothing Less show. They'd never heard of this movement. And they'd never actually thought that there's another choice besides lining up behind one or another country or behind your own ruler and just working at it incrementally. And so to me, I really agree with what you said in terms of the kind of struggle over against this American chauvinism and how they look at it. But the other side of this is that there was a tremendous amount of openness, and it indicates to me the basis to really get out and challenge a whole section of people who've never heard of this, and to not only be focused in or even mainly focused in with the existing movements as desiccated and pitiful as they are today, and as tied so tightly into doing their own part to enforce and to keep people tied to America and the promise of America. But there was a great deal of openness here, including from some of the people who put together this show.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I mean, openness, and I think a real agonizing, because people feel they're in a bind and there aren't answers and they don't like choosing. I mean, I had a couple conversations where people said, I don't like having to choose, and I don't like war, this kind of unjust war, but I don't see a way out. And I think there was a lot of openness to hearing that there's actual answers.
All right, so I think this is an important thing to do tonight, and it should be the first of many such provocative installations and outings that people do. And we have very little time to wake up the masses of people in this country, but there is enough time if we get out there the way you did tonight. You can just hear the enthusiasm right there. All right, Annie, that was a great night.
All right, so we have nearly reached the end of today's episode of the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show. But before we close out, I managed to convince Lenny and Michelle to stick around and join me back here for a few minutes because we have an important announcement and invitation that we want to put to you. Coming up, Lenny and Michelle, in addition to the segment you did today and other segments on our show, you have recently hosted the last major fundraising live stream. Did a lot of fun we had watching you, and my understanding is you are going to be hosting another one coming up very soon.
We are, and I want to say a couple of things about it and then turn it over to Michelle. One is that we are going for a goal of $100,000 by February 19th. And we need this money both to support the Revolution Nothing Less YouTube show. We need this money to support the work of the Time to Get Organized for an Actual Revolution tour. And we especially need this money to support the Revcom.us, but we especially want this money to be promoting these recent interviews that were done on this show with Bob Avakian, the 3 parts that we've referred to on today's show. And to make these what they need to be in society. We still haven't quite broken out with them. And that's going to be a major theme of this, of some of what we're going to ask you to do in addition to raising the money. But by February 19th, we want to be much further to the goal of 100,000. We're a little over 70 right now. We want to be further to 100,000. We want to get past 100,000. 100,000 is not the ceiling by any means. It's the floor. We need to get way past it if we're going to get this revolution out where it needs to be.
So one of the things, and then I'll ask you, Michelle, is that we want to ask people right now to donate, to go to people that you know to donate, to start raising this money so that we're closer by the time the 19th comes, and that people are lined up to watch together and to donate on the 19th. So we really take this over the top. Michelle, you have some ideas on how you want people to participate leading up to this to help give it more momentum?
Yeah, we want to hear from you, the audience, of the show, to send in your ideas, send in, what you have been doing, some of these really important experiences that are up on our website, revcom.us, that you can read about, of people hosting internationalist, dinners with like different food from different parts of the world, going out and selling, big goods, talking to other people, getting them involved in this revolution. We want to hear, about all of these experiences and, go on the website, read about these experiences, brainstorm with others in your area, get, prepare fundraising watch parties for the 19th where you gather people, watch together, and continue to brainstorm because, as you said, we're just 100,000 is just the beginning. This is how we're kicking off 2023. So we want to hear people's ideas. We want to hear from you. We want to hear statements, start making videos as you're out there, getting out these Bob Avakian interviews, capture people's responses, capture why people are donating. And we're going to be showing all of this. Lenny and I will be here in studio, showing and sharing how this is part of a whole nationwide movement that is, working to, on this revolution.
Yeah, look, let me say this. We are absolutely serious about making revolution in this rare time when revolution is more possible than it normally is. We are absolutely serious about making this revolution, putting this revolution on the map in 2023. That is making it so that people know about this revolution. Whatever they think about it, they need to know about it, and increasing numbers of people need to be coming towards it. And you, all of you in the audience, have a role to play. The revolution is not just made by the revolutionaries. It's not just made by the leadership. There needs to be masses of people who may not be sure about revolution, but who are supportive of it, who want to see this out there, who hunger it all for a whole new world and are beginning to get into this revolution. If any of that fits you, you need to be part of this movement. You need to be coming to the live stream and being part of a community that's taking shape around this revolution. So again, I just wanted to underscore what Michelle was saying and to ask everybody to tune us in on February 19th. And we'll see you then, right?
Yes.
All right. And, one of the things that I appreciated in the last live stream, and that we had a guest, Phil Rice, come on, Dr. Phil Rice, and talk about in the fundraising, was actually going out and asking people to donate is a way to introduce brand new people to this revolution. You don't have to go just to those who know. And the live stream is a great introduction, as is this show. So I want to thank you guys for sticking around. Go ahead. You have one more?
I just thought it's worth it for people to watch Phil's interview again.
Mm-hmm.
And what he said about how he had used to pre-sort people who would be interested from people who wouldn't. And then this time he didn't. And he was kind of surprised at the results. Just watch the interview again.
And he actually said he did that because he watched BA's interviews and he saw how broadly BA was speaking to people and how broadly he saw the potential if we went to them with this revolution for them to relate to it. I think there's a lot of lesson in that. So as we close out, I also want to just give a special shout out one more time to all our Patreons, everybody who supports this show, our 3 new patrons this past week. Special love to you. And that's another way to be part of strengthening and spreading the revolution, is supporting this show. We're going to be doing more upcoming treats for Patreons we'll tell you about in the coming weeks. And with that, on behalf of the whole Revolution Nothing Less crew and Andy Z, who couldn't be here today, I want to say good night, and we'll see you next week.